I just seen a sneak peek preview of the movie. My God. Movie of the year. Ryan Coogler, great director, great storyline. It's a must-see. This is phenomenal. So says Snoop Dogg.
I mean, you don't really need my opinion after that, but I'm gonna give it to you for quite a while. Because that's what I do. I'm the Antichrist. This is my agenda. I talk about horror movies. And Ryan Coogler might have just dropped the movie of the year. Sorry, did I move on from that too quickly? I am Satan's favorite daughter. Nice to meet you. Haunted Hippie. Government name is Kylie. How do you do? If you like getting reviews of horror movies, or top 10 lists, or watching someone get baked and then talk about horror movies, this is the place. Click subscribe, click the like button, click the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. We gotta get into it for today. I didn't craft like a full, thorough deep dive. This was a little bit of a rush review because, you know, yesterday was Easter, there's family stuff going on. Obviously, I was getting trashed. So we'll make do with like the 8 or 9 interviews that I did get to watch. We're gonna start with my expectations going in, then we will talk about all of the fun facts that I learned and kind of all the backstory that led Coogler to making this film. I think that'll provide a pretty nice transition into my spoiler-free thoughts on the movie. I think that'll be sprinkled around. And then finally, we will get into the spoiler section. I'm gonna try to dig into some of the themes in the spoiler-free section. So it's gonna be a real mishmash, which I actually think is fitting because that's what this movie is. This is such a genre blender, and I'm so stoked to get into it. If you couldn't tell, let's talk about my expectations. I was very excited. Unfortunately, I have only seen the Black Panther films from Coogler, and same with Michael B. Jordan, but Black Panther is like a magnum opus type film, and also, to be fair, I have never seen the Rocky movies. I know you're gasping. Look, you can see only 2 films from a filmmaker and still be a huge fan and still be very excited. I booked those tickets as soon as they went up, like a month in advance, and it was one of those movies where I just had no doubts. I had none at all. You can't put this team of people together and then not produce something fantastic. Sure, we've said that about movies in the past with all-star teams that turn out to be stinkers, but sometimes you just know, and with this one I just knew. Also, this was something that wasn't pointed out to me until afterwards, but this is the 4th movie of the year where we get one of the actors playing 2 people in the movie. And I think it's actually always been the lead too. There was The Alto Nights starring Robert De Niro, and then we had The Monkey. We also had Mickey 17, and now we have Sinners. I didn't see The Alto Nights. The Monkey uses tricks that are like a little bit more classic, whereas Mickey 17 was like a clear demonstration of, oh, we've really upped this technology now. And Sinners is no different. I'll get into that later, but just wanted to point out that's a very interesting trend right now. And it's always dudes. Give me like a set of evil goth girlies. We got Parent Trap back in the day, and then the movie industry said no more twins for you ladies. Anyway, getting more into the backstory that I learned about this film, Ryan Coogler is a huge horror movie fan, which I never knew, especially because he doesn't have the traditional horror director career path. A lot of our most prolific horror directors actually got into the industry not wanting that to be their sole focus. John Carpenter was in love with westerns. That's what he really wanted to make. Wes Craven really wanted to make dramas. Mike Flanagan is the same way. He's a drama boy through and through. James Wan, he wanted to make, bigger action blockbusters. Coogler started with the blockbusters and then gives us this oh my god, very untraditional, very awesome. Because, I know, okay, so Mike Flanagan obviously, respects the horror craft. James Wan still produces a lot of horror. But a lot of times, once horror directors get away from the genre, they start to kind of reveal how much contempt they actually have for it. Ari Aster. So to see someone with the opposite trajectory, I just think that's neat. So Coogler's dad's favorite film was Rocky, so then for him to make Creed, sick. But his father's second favorite movie was John Carpenter's Halloween, so he grew up on a ton of classic horror. Another family connection, the one that was the biggest inspiration for this movie, was his uncle James. He passed away in 2015 while Coogler was out in LA and he was working on Creed. So while he was pursuing his dream, he recalls missing all these big kind of milestones, birthday parties, etc. for his family. And he missed the passing of his uncle, which was devastating to him because it seems like they had a pretty strong connection from the different sort of bits that he dropped about him. That's just what it seemed like in the interviews, because he would say that when the circumstances would be just right, he would get all these insane stories about his uncle and how he basically had to flee from Mississippi because he got in trouble with his white boss, that he was a huge blues fan. And so then once he passed away, Ryan Coogler started listening to all these old blues vinyls, and whenever he would do that, he felt like he was conjuring the spirit of his uncle. From what I gather, it seems like that was kind of the initial initial spark to make this whole movie. Another huge inspiration was twins, and this is a part of Black culture that is like brand new information to me. I think it was in his Sway's Universe podcast that he talked about how prolific twins are in Black communities. He grew up in Oakland, and he said that basically, like, no matter what area you were in, there always seemed to be like a designated set of twins in a neighborhood. He traced it back to some like West African cultures that some of their deities are also twins, but for generations and in modern day, according to him, because you couldn't tell them apart, like you would call them twin, and that's still a term of endearment that you see in their modern slang, like Black people calling their friends twin. And then I didn't quite pick up on why he chose to set the movie in the time period that he did, so I don't know if this is completely confirmed. I am inferring that it has to do with the music. He did a ton of research into the era of the 1930s, specifically into juke joints, into sharecropping, into the Prohibition era. Sharecropping was a newer form of essentially slavery at that time, which then fed into the creation of juke joints. These were so important because the music and the dancing, this was how people escaped. If only for a few hours, they could escape their oppression. What fascinated me the most, you see this reflected in the movie, but especially in his interviews, Coogler talks about the generations of music and how a lot of the issues are still the same today. They just have morphed over time. For instance, the juke joints, now we see that in modern day nightclub culture. The Delta blues, which are explored in this movie, that's majority of the music that you hear, according to Coogler, was the first music to be called the devil's music. So this movie also gets into the sort of constant conflict between the two cultures of music in the church. He said that people who performed the Delta blues were essentially the gangster rappers of their era, because Coogler grew up in the 90s and that was what his dad was always listening to, because throughout generations this new music comes up that is then questioned by their elders. But even with that tension, with the music being questioned, the music is ultimately what connects every generation. When it comes to the music, this movie had me levitating out of my chair several times. The music is the glue that holds all of these concepts together and all of these genres together. I'm starting to get ahead of myself a little bit talking about my spoiler-free thoughts, but like I said, they're gonna be littered around. I have just a few more fun facts for you. So obviously, of course, Coogler cast his fave, Michael B. Jordan, and all of our faves, let's be real. In a couple interviews, Jordan mentioned that he basically always says yes first. Well, he says yes, but let me read the script, but like yes. He said that Sinners was his fastest read so far, which he was surprised by because he himself is not a horror fan. He says he's a bit of a scaredy cat, but something that was echoed by like all of the cast and crew was that they had so much fun making this movie, which is true. Making horror movies is the most fun. They are always the best sets to be on, I swear. Because I feel like you'd be surprised by just how many actors are down to get like gross and bloody. But anyway, Michael B. Jordan also did a deep dive on twins. Coogler had friends who were twins, so he spent a lot of time picking their brains, just kind of on like their psychology, how they engage with one another. Wunmi Mosaku is also such a talented woman. So she's British, but they had a dialect coach on set because they were having to do these pretty thick Southern accents. According to her, she never dropped her accent on set, and also she kept the accent on at home so that her real accent wouldn't come forward. She feels like sometimes when actors drop their accents, or maybe she was just talking about herself, that can affect the consistency of the on-screen accent. Found that fascinating. My last fun fact for now, this is a movie that actually made history. It was shot on IMAX film, making it a historic first, the first woman to shoot on an IMAX camera. It also utilized Panavision System 65 cameras. Not only was it shot on IMAX, but it was also shot on 65mm, and that is exactly why you need to see this movie in a packed house. It's only going to be in IMAX, I think, for the next 2 weeks before Marvel comes and pushes it out, so I would definitely take advantage. I saw it in the Dolby Cinema myself. I tend to prefer the Dolby Cinema just because it's the best music in my opinion. Also, the chairs are a little more comfortable, I'm not gonna hold you, and it's still a giant, amazing screen. So if you don't make it, don't worry, but maybe try to see it in Dolby, although the Thunderbolts is probably gonna steal those screens too. But anyway, Coogler said many times he wants people off of their phones, he wants you to see it in a packed house, he wants it to be a communal experience. He really made a movie for the biggest screens, especially at a time when the industry is struggling and creativity is kind of being suppressed. He used his resources to their fullest potential. Now, getting more into my spoiler-free thoughts, I want to start with the acting, just because I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Nothing I'm going to say is not completely obvious already. Michael B. Jordan needs an Oscar. So does literally everybody else for supporting. Miles Caton, everybody's gonna be freaking out about him when they get out of this theater, and when he was on the Sherry show, she was like, how does it feel knowing that, you know, all the biggest directors and stuff are about to be knocking on your door? And she was right for that. Honestly, he is only 19 years old. He has the voice of of hundreds of generations. There is so much soul in his voice. I know that I'm the Antichrist, but dare I say he has the voice of an angel. It's, my God. Not only that, but apparently he learned how to play the slide guitar for this film. There's also some pretty complex blocking while he is performing, and they have to do some live vocals on set. He masters all of it. Part of the theme of this movie is that sometimes like people are so in tune with their music that while they're playing, it literally attracts spirits from like the past and present and future. I don't know if there's any other actor that could have so perfectly expressed just like the unmitigated joy of sharing your craft like that. Other actors performed in the movie too though, and same with them. I don't know if it's Coogler or what, if he's just able to find people that are able to so perfectly like express their craft like that. I was obsessed. That's why I was levitating. I told you, I floated up out of my chair. And I feel like music is kind of the only thing that you can experience that with. I play piano, but not that good. And I also direct my own short films. I'm sorry, sidebar. They're always linked down below. You can check them out. They're on my channel. I'm also fundraising for the next one. Okay, sorry. But the only thing I can kind of compare it to is like when I'm in the director's chair and you get a shot that comes off more perfectly than you ever could have imagined in your wildest daydreams in your head. And then when you finally call cut, it's like, it's a pure shot of dopamine, to be fair, but it's nothing like performing music. And Miles Caton really was like the beating heart of this film, just especially in that regard. So not only is this movie an example of why I love movies so much, but it's also an example of why I love music so much. It gave me the urge to rewatch Robert Eggers' Northman, actually, because I feel like we haven't gotten such an epic period piece since then. Granted, that was what, like 3 years ago, but it's also been 3 years since we got Babylon, and like that's the same thing. Not just a period piece, not just something that's like decorated all pretty to like transport you to another dimension, but something epic, something that turns the movie theater screen into a dementor that literally like sucks your soul towards it. It's not something that can be like quantified. It's not something that you can put into words, really. If you love movies a certain amount, if you love music a certain amount, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This movie gave me the need to express more emotion than like actually talk about the movie itself. That's kind of how powerful it was. And once again, the music being that through line that it was is what kept all of the genre bending from getting too twisted. It's a family movie first and foremost. I think they spend about an hour setting up these brothers, who they are as they come back to town. They set up all their relationships with these different like merchants and different musicians in town. I love having that kind of setup. More often than not, and I love these horror movies, but more often than not, the characters that are set up are very cliche. They're very tropey so that you just kind of immediately know who everyone is. And that's fine. I don't mind just jumping into the deep end, but it is so much more gratifying when you just dip your toe in at first. You wade into the shallow end. You're getting to know the temperature. You're getting to know everybody. And then like an hour into the movie, you start all the action, things get crazy. I love that. Oh, a slow burn. Not that it is a slow burn, because the movie is pretty quickly paced. It's funny. You're having to meet all these different characters, you know, it's not slow by any means. But in terms of the action, perhaps. Then after that, there is another act just of rising tension. Once you see sort of what the inciting incident is and what the movie will become, then there's a whole act of there's a lot of partying, the music, there's this one scene that, you know it, everybody knows it. It's the top review on Letterboxd talking about it, but don't want to spoil it right now. It makes the payoff of the third act just going wild that much better. I love how in that time we also build up different sets of lore and we learn about different sets of ancestry. This also has to do with the music, and whether it be music that's being performed or it's the score or it's a blending of the two, I might like this score almost as much as Babylon, if not the same, if not more. That's saying a fucking lot, okay? That's saying a fucking lot. Also, on a technical level, oh my god, that scene, there's this oneer. I can only dream of ever conceptualizing some of the shots in this movie. Obviously, on all technical levels, it's fantastic. It's a Ryan Coogler film. There actually was technology developed for this film specifically to shoot the two Michael B. Jordans. I wish I had time to like research the differences between this movie and Mickey 17, but god, it's so seamless in this movie. There's kind of a whole little exchange in the beginning that's maybe like 30 seconds. When we first meet the twins, they get out of their car, they're like sharing a cigarette. And to me, it felt a little bit like showboating. It was like, yeah, yep, the technology is gonna be this good in this movie, so strap in, which I love. I love a moment like that, because I also recently watched Ghost for the first time because it came back to theaters. And there are so many moments in that movie where it's so clear the filmmakers are just having a blast playing with new technology. We've completely lost that, I feel like, in cinema. The last time I feel like that happened was maybe Avatar: The Way of Water, also like 3 years ago now, where we just get to live in the amazing technical achievements of movies, and it's clear that the director is having a lot of fun with it. You get some of that sprinkled in this movie. Was obsessed. Visual effects are fantastic. There are some great practical effects as well. Also completely needless to say. But thematically, obviously, this movie is totally rich. I've already kind of gotten into a lot of it, what with like all the research that Coogler did that I shared. It's about, you know, family and ancestry, who you choose to be versus the nature of who you are. Wonmi Mosaku and Haley Steinfeld also play these characters that you get to explore the concept of love with a little bit. Love based on your roots versus love based on your identity, things like that. Obviously, there's like a huge theme of both oppression and repression. Oppression from outside community versus repression of your own community, you know, the church. The concepts of freedom are also woven really gracefully throughout the movie, and it's kind of the point that you end on. One motif very common throughout the movie is money, and how when you're oppressed, the stakes of the deals that you make are always much higher. It's, I guess, about like the illusion of control a little bit. There's so much going on in this movie. I realize I've thrown a lot at you without getting into too much about the actual movie itself, but that's really for the best. I think it is for the best to go into this movie as blind as you can, because that's what I did. I remember when the movie was announced and it said what the sort of subgenre of the movie was going to be, but then once all the marketing started coming out and the synopsis came out, the hints of that subgenre were nowhere to be found. So I kind of knew, but I didn't really know going in, and that was for the best. I'm so happy that I never saw a trailer. I just had full faith and it paid off. So that's what I recommend that you do. Notice I haven't read a synopsis or anything. I've given you a really good idea of a lot of what's going on in the movie though. I gave this movie 4.5 stars only because I felt like when we got to the end, it was starting to feel a little bit too drug out. So I was starting to feel the length of this movie. So I think you trim just a little bit off the end, maybe a little bit off the first act, and I would say perfect film, but I don't know, because I could go back and rewatch and then give it 5 stars now that I know like what the movie is, what it's all about. I have all the expectations in place. Maybe I'll consider it a perfect film. I think that might be the case. But yeah, for my first viewing, that's my truth. If you forget to come back to this video for the spoiler section, then please do remember this. I think that the best interviews are found on Sway's Universe, Pay Your Weight, and the Sherry Show. I felt like I learned the most, I got the most insight from those interviews. So hopefully I will remember to link those down below. It's really, really good, like supplemental viewing once you watch the movie. All right, if you want to avoid all the spoilers for this movie, then I recommend that you click off, but I will be waiting right here for you when you get back. So it's a vampire movie. Like I said, I remember when it was announced, like, was that like 2 years ago now? And it was like, new Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan vampire movie. And then it was crickets. Like, I didn't remember getting any updates about the movie. They must have kept everything very much under wraps. And like I said, I didn't watch trailers. Maybe one of you can let me know in the comments, like, did they reveal that it was going to be a vampire movie in any of the trailers? I don't know, but I also hate that, like, while they were doing their promotion, several of the interviewers did mention the fact that it was a vampire movie. Like, Jimmy Fallon, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? You're trying to convince people to go see this movie? I want the masses to be so unexpectedly horrified by that. But you know, some people really need to know what they're getting in for, and they want like the whole synopsis. So I know that I'm not the audience for Jimmy Fallon, but whatever. I don't think I'm gonna get into the entire plot breakdown now, because to me it was just more worth the time to get into all the themes of the movie. But I'll hit on some of like the bigger points in my reactions. Oh, you know what? I can mention this now. Another reason why I docked the movie a half star is because I'm just not really a big fan of when movies start at their ending. So we open up in the church, and I do think it's a great scene. Those first jump scares, like I flew out of my chair. I wasn't ready for that, especially being in the Dolby Cinema. It was very loud. There's a subwoofer under all the chairs, and so I felt the jump. Those were good scene. But then I found myself like checking in with that scene throughout the movie to be like, oh, I wonder when he's like gonna get the scratch on his face. Oh, the whole movie takes place just over the course of this one night. Oh, so he's gonna survive this somehow. Like, I don't enjoy knowing that stuff. I thought that there was maybe another way they could have set up the dynamic between him and his father, like him in the church, because Sammy's father claims that his music has this like dangerous supernatural power, that he's gonna attract demons or the devil. Setting that up is necessary to me, because initially he seems like he's a teenager who is perhaps just rebellious. You can see the spark of his spirit of wanting to play music, but initially you don't know just like how deep that goes. When you first first see him perform, though, it becomes abundantly clear, obviously, like just how important it is. But we'll get there. We'll get there. I've already sort of touched on how when the twins return home, we see all their relationship dynamics. We're introduced to all these characters. So skipping past that, when we saw the Choctaw vampire hunters trying to chase this Irish immigrant, I was like, oh, I think that's a spin-off that I want to see. I was so curious about the lore there. The fact that we only get them, you know, the Native Americans for like this 2-minute scene. I was like, oh, I want more backstory beyond the opening narration. There's also a lot to get into with him showing up at the home of these two Klansmen. They really play into the dynamic of like wolf in sheep's clothing with those 3 characters. Brilliant, brilliant, but we don't have time to get into it all because we need to talk about the juke joint. That scene. I'm gonna read off the top Letterboxd review because it's just so perfect. That one sequence, you'll know it when you see it. Magnum opus type scene, spirit awakening type scene, inspirational, foundational, monumental. We'll be watching 100 more times. Oh my god, wait, there's a new review that I hadn't seen. Oh my god, Coogler cashed in his blank check on a vampire dance battle movie about why you should never trust the Irish. I'm levitating right now. Oh, it's my favorite thing too when directors become big time and they don't sell out like the Russo brothers. Ooh, I called them by name. Sorry, I'm not trying to evoke them right now. Be gone. But with Robert Eggers, The Northman, with Damien Chazelle, Babylon, and now Ryan Coogler, Sinners proved that some directors do deserve the blank check. Really with that scene alone. Like, we went with friends, and when we talked about the movie afterwards, one of my friends was expressing that, like, she felt a little bit lost by that scene. She was, like, with the movie up until that point, and then she was kind of like, what's going on? And I was like, not me. Because for one thing, the filmmaking, the absolute audacity on display. I say audacity because what do you mean? Who came up with that idea? And who had the balls to be like, let's fucking do it. But also because I was like, yeah, this is just what it's like to listen to good music. That's exactly what it feels like. There was one time, maybe a year ago, that I had taken an adult gummy and I had made my dinner and I was just sitting at the table and I had my AirPods in and I was listening to Oh Sweet Nothing by the Velvet Underground. And I just started sobbing because in my little teeny tiny high brain, as I was listening to this music that just nurtured my soul, I couldn't help but thinking that majority of the, like, you know, the original band members have passed away, but what they created still made it feel like they were right there with me. Like I could feel their fingers on their guitars and like I felt like I could transport myself to the recording booth and it overwhelmed me. And this movie was probably the first one I've ever seen that depicted that so perfectly. It depicted exactly the kind of like connection that I feel when I listen to music. Soul is another one that it doesn't take it all the way there, but it also really beautifully demonstrates how you feel when you're like connected to playing your music. Genuinely magnum opus type shit. Like there's no other way to say it. Then of course everything gets crazy. Vampires manage to get in. All of the super tense scenes leading up to that were beautifully crafted horror. Not only gory, disgusting, rife with tension, but also extremely psychological. People are having to confront their loved ones who have changed. Remick tries to convince Sammy that with vampirism comes immortality, freedom from racism, that he would get community. It was kind of like a weird little like hippie vampire commune vibe, hence getting into how high the stakes are when you're trying to escape your oppression. I think that can be relatable to almost anybody in our current society right now, there being no ethical consumerism under capitalism, which is why I personally understood why he chose to walk away from the church and still pursue his music at the end. I was talking with my partner and he like didn't really understand because he was like, well, isn't he gonna summon the devil? Like, why would he keep playing? But I thought that he sort of overcame the devil that came his way, you know? He destroyed him, he killed him. So to me, because he accomplished that, I interpreted that as him being willing to roll those dice in order to pursue his greatest love. Because I don't know, maybe at that point, like, he realized, well, I got this. Like, I can handle what comes my way. He did have the help of Smoke to kill Remick, but, you know, he smashed his head with that guitar. That was awesome. Anyway, once the vampires are all gone, I really thought the movie was gonna wind down, but then the callback to end all callbacks. I didn't really think anything of it in the beginning of the movie when the twins were like, and if a single clan member like steps foot on our land, we're gonna shoot them where they stand. I thought that was just, you know, setting up part of their characters. They're hard asses, they take care of business. I never thought that it would come back around. So the fact that it all was like a ploy by the clan to like eventually burn down their joint, I personally didn't see that coming. And then when all the members came back, this was such a horny moment. I'm sorry, but Smoke gunning all of them down, getting shot in the process, and then continuing to shoot them and launch a grenade into their truck. Yeah, on Letterboxd, I said this movie healed something in me, and I wanted to keep it spoiler free, but that something really was Michael B. Jordan killing a bunch of Nazis. My soul needed that right now. And then in a moment that could have been totally overly melodramatic and cheesy or just downright strange, as Smoke is like wavering in between life and the afterlife, he sees Annie and his daughter, fires another bajillion rounds into the clan leader, and then joins his family. Like, that was so fucking beautiful. Are you kidding me? I suppose I'll end there just because we've kind of already gotten into Sammy rejecting his father and ultimately pursuing his music. There's the whole epilogue. Such a powerful film, such a crazy film. It manages to cram in every single thing that I love about cinema. All technical aspects, all the acting, the themes, the horror, the gore, like it has it all. I'm so excited to talk about this movie with you. Please leave all your comments down below. Definitely put a spoiler warning on anything, even if it's only mild spoilers, because like I said, I'm just a really staunch advocate for going into this movie as blind as you possibly can. So I want to be courteous to our fellow community members. Also, if you're new here and you made it to the end of the video and you haven't clicked subscribe, that's kind of embarrassing for you. Like, that's kind of weird. So stick around for more videos like this every single week. I also have a second channel where I mainly talk about physical media. If you are a fellow collector, that's the place to be. But this week I am posting my vlog of the Winchester Mystery House. And then afterwards I do a little bit of a mini dive and a little bit of a breakdown of like comparing the tour to the movie Winchester. So that's exciting. That's coming up. I also have a Patreon. And this week on the Patreon, we have a podcast episode with my dad. It's called Boomers, spelled with a Z because he's a boomer and I'm Gen Z, and I share a lot about, you know, culture and what's going on the internet with him, and it's a hoot. This week we're talking about Minecraft and Sunrise on the Reaping, and there are several other movies scattered throughout, but great episode. Definitely join us over there for that. Depending on which tier you join, you get a bonus video every single week. And everything else you need is linked down below. Go crazy, have fun, follow me on Instagram or something. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye.